everyone. Thank you so much for attending Evolve's first career fair. Before we get started, the board panelists and I will quickly introduce ourselves. I'm Caitlin, and I'm one of the two founders of Evolve.
I am Isha, and I'm the other founder of Evolve.
I'm Ria, and I'm the Director of Outreach here at Evolve.
I'm Angel, and I'm an outreach member at Evolve.
I'm Praniti, and I'm the Director of Curriculum.
And now each of the panelists will introduce themselves.
Let me just make sure, it's my turn? Sorry, I was multitasking. Yes, so this is Hari Nair. I head up product management for a cybersecurity startup. Been with that firm for around 7-8 years, but I've been in the industry for 20 plus years, mostly in the Silicon Valley, and really excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Padma Choudry. I am a senior corporate counsel at a tech firm based in Palo Alto, but I am based on the East Coast. And they've had a meandering path to get here. So we can talk a little bit more about that. Nice to meet you all. And thank you for inviting me.
Hi, I'm Mary Glyde. I'm VP Technology at Sequoia Capital. I've been there the last 18 years. And I had a bit of a career change before that. I was a CPA for a few years.
Perfect. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. So now we will begin with a few questions for each of the panelists. So Isha, take it from here.
So our first question is, what sparked your interest in going into the field that you're currently in?
I'll go first. I guess we're just following that order, right? So yeah, it was funny to believe, but it was a pure accident. I did my undergrad in mechanical engineering and headed into this discipline called supply chain management in aerospace. I was also to join United Airlines, when you're like 21, 22 years old, getting an opportunity to join an airline company, right? And the opportunity to go visit the world with your family once a year sounded very appealing. So all set to go there. And then I happened to run into somebody who was a VP of technology at a wedding, out here, wedding of one of my fellow batchmates at graduate school. And one thing led to another, and he was handing out cards saying, hey, I'm starting this company, you might want to find out what it's about, right? And so even though I was kind of set in my path, I felt, hey, what's to lose, right? So went and, met this man. He's found a really about how the world is all going to the internet. This was in the late 90s, right? So the internet was still kind of catching up, so to speak, getting popular. And he spun this grand vision about how everything is going to be done over the internet. People are going to buy shoes over the internet, right? Things that we take for granted today. At that point, it was like, no way. Right? And so I kind of fell for the vision. It was a very attractive, very compelling vision. And next thing I knew, I was telling United Airlines, thank you for the wonderful opportunity, but I'm going to decline it, and I'm going to go and join a startup in a cybersecurity firm, even though I knew very little about either. Right. But it was just one of those accidental things. But along the way, I've realized that it was probably the right thing to do. Right. And probably teasing up, response to a question that you have a little later. But one of the big things that I've found worked well for me in my career was the ability to kind of follow your heart. If you're not passionate about what you do, sooner or later, you'll get bored of it. So that's how I got here. Pure accident, but not a moment of regret or repentance.
Mary already mentioned that she had a career change, so I feel like maybe we have a little bit of a theme going on.
Yeah.
But I wish that I was one of these people that knew what I wanted to do since I was a little kid, but I never was that person. I don't know that I'm still that person. And so I think, I wanted to be many different things. I still want to be many different things. So I finally, after I graduated college, I had a double major in English and biology. Even there, I didn't make up my mind. And then I had a couple of jobs working in IT project management and in fashion design, of all things. And then I went back to school. I knew I wanted to go back to school. I always loved learning, still to this day. And so, but I didn't know what I wanted to go back for. I've always been good at school, but and interested in everything. So it's hard to narrow things down, I think, at least it has been for me. And so I ended up taking classes from business school, medical school, and law school. I really liked law school classes, so that's what I ended up doing. And so I've been a lawyer since then. You know, even in the law, I've changed what I've been doing, and law school is not what being a lawyer is like either. So I think again, teeing up my response for later, but I think it's I always love learning, and I think it has served me well to always be open to new experiences and to kind of follow where life takes you, I think. Yeah. So I'll stop there and save the rest of my answer for later.
I was the kid that always liked to take apart computers or VCR or any piece of electrical equipment we had in the house. Just a fun hobby, you know, writing little computer programs. Never thought it could be a career. This was, you know, before everything has exploded to where we are today. So actually was going to be a doctor, knew I wanted to be a doctor, did all my pre-med coursework in college. And then when it came time to fill out the application, decided I wasn't wanting to go to school for another however many years. So quickly switched to majoring in accounting and became a CPA, paid off all my college loans and realized, you know what, this was a choice that I made just because I needed to make a quick choice, but not necessarily what I wanted to do. And so that was when I joined Sequoia, because they were oddly looking for someone to do both finance and build out their technology organization. And so I joined, also took on marketing there when I started. It was a much smaller company at the time, so they didn't have people in all these roles or departments yet. And then eventually built out their technology organization, ended up doing a lot of software development over the years and have grown with the company.
Okay, and I'll be asking the next question, and that is, what is the biggest piece of advice that you would give to your high school self and to high schoolers today?
So from my standpoint, I think we talked about it a little earlier, but most important thing is to take your time, right? I think multiple of us have said it, you know, it's okay to not know what you want. It's very, very rare actually that you run to people who know when they were 8, 10, 12, or even 15, that this is exactly what they want to be. And more importantly, get to where they want to be, right? So it's okay to not know. But more importantly, it's very important that you ask, right? You ask, you talk to people. There's just so many people, there's so much help in the community, especially in the high-tech industry, if that's an area of interest where, you know, it's all virtual now, right? So it costs nothing to go out and ask somebody, hey, you know, along the lines of what you guys are asking today, you know, what's a day like? How did you get here? What are some of the biggest, you know, thrills that you had? What are some of the biggest regrets you've had? And somebody wise once said, you know, experience is knowing what not to do, right? And lots of us have lots of experience in knowing what not to do. So it's totally fine to ask, totally fine to say, look, you know, can I get 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour? And don't assume that it's very precious, right? Many of us in this industry who've been here for a while, you know, get a lot of you know, satisfaction from paying it forward, right? Because we've had mentors along the way that have kind of guided us at different paths in our life. And it's more than happy to kind of spend the time, as much time as you need, as you think it would be helpful to kind of provide you that guidance. So when I was coming in through high school, it was more peer pressure than anything else. Everybody in my close, you know, circle were either getting into, you know, medicine or engineering, right? And so I just kind of felt to go along with the flow. I was naturally good at math and science and things like that. And so okay, I'm going to be an engineer, right? Got into undergrad and basically said, okay, what's the one discipline that will allow me to go into any further stream of engineering? And mechanical was something that I felt would be helpful. But here I am 20, 25 years later, and I'm doing, you know, I'm using maybe less than 1% of what I learned in my undergrad, maybe less than 5% of what I learned in my grad school, right? So it's okay. It's okay to take steps. It's okay to then say, no, this is not what I want to do, because even that journey gives you so much along the way, right? And a lot of it has less to do with what you're learning, but more to do with the people that you're interacting with, the lessons that you're learning, how other people have done things and things like that. So keep your eyes and ears open, do not be afraid to ask for help. And, as you progress further along in your career, pay it forward yourself. Oh, you're on mute, Padma.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Just noticed
no
that.
worries.
Thank you. Yeah, the phrase of the year, you're on mute.
Exactly.
But so my advice is along similar lines. So life does not go according to plan. That's I think the biggest advice I would give to my high school self. That doesn't mean you shouldn't make a plan. It doesn't, but it means you should be flexible and enjoy the ride, because it might take you different places. Be ready and open for opportunity. But I think you've heard from all of us here today, we're all doing very different things than what our 8-year-old self thought, or 15-year-old self thought, or even our 20-year-old self thought. So it's okay. I think the joy of learning and the joy of figuring out where it is, that's all should be joy. And so even when you make mistakes, that's part of the learning experience. There's, we're going to talk about later what the challenges in our career are, and there's challenges, and when you're going through them, they're not fun, but you got to take away what you can from each of those experiences. And so that's what, be flexible, and it's okay that your life doesn't go according to the plan that you set right now. That's my advice.
I feel like we've all had similar experiences, because I want to say all the same things that were just said. But yeah, you don't have to have it all figured out. I thought I had things figured out several times along the way, and I clearly did not. I didn't realize you could do something you love, that, your hobbies could even lead to a career someday. So, it's always good to just kind of explore the things that interest you, see where you naturally go towards. And definitely meeting people, you will be surprised at how open people are to talk to you. People reach out to me all the time, and I'm more than happy to meet with them, chat with them. I had an employee once who, she told me one day she wanted to become an author. And, it was a very big career change. And she just started reaching out, cold calling authors. And now she has written several books. And it's just amazing to see how much just learning from other people's experiences, you can figure out what you want to do.
I'll be asking the next question. What does a typical day look like at your job?
Yeah, before I respond, so if you have questions along the way, please feel free to kind of fire them into the chat, as things come up, right? Just FYI, you don't have to wait to ask, because we might run out of time. But, a typical day for me, starts at like 4:15 in the morning. I'm an early riser. I work for a startup, right? And so on one hand, it's super exciting because you get the opportunity to wear different types of hats, right? Any point in time, right? You might be doing anything from, coming up with a document that basically talks about, hey, here's how I'm going to solve a cool new problem, to presenting to an executive as to why your idea needs to get funded, to, kind of seeing it get implemented. Well, that's not, exactly how I designed it. And, we need to iterate out and tweak it and tune it as you see fit. So lots of interesting stuff to do, but the other side to that is you are very busy, right? So on any given day, I can be in anywhere from 10 to, in some cases, 20, 25 different meetings. I work for a firm that's distributed all around the world. We've got folks in, pretty much every time zone in the US, but we also have folks in Europe, and we have, sales folks in Australia and, Far East as well. So, suffice to say, the clock never stops, so to speak, right? And so it's very important that you set some time aside for yourself. Again, just a, friendly piece of advice. Always set some time aside to yourself, because once you get into the normal, day-to-day routine, if you will, you're in meetings, you're running from one meeting to another. A lot of times I'm kind of backed up all the way to like 5:36 in the evening, right? And so I find it very important for my own creative fulfillment to be able to kind of carve a little bit of time aside. And that's why 4 a.m. is great, because, no meetings at that point, kids are all asleep. So you have some time to yourself. But then, once you get past that 6, 7, you're in different types of meetings. Sometimes it's working with your own team and kind of giving them direction and guidance in terms of where we want to go. Sometimes it's talking to analysts and customers. So a lot of my time is spent talking to customers about why, we're going a certain direction or how we can help them solve a problem in their world. And then, towards the end of the day, it's a lot of internal meetings, talking to our engineering folks, talking to, other folks within the organization about, how we can get better, right? Or looking back at some things that went better than expected or worse than expected. So lots of meetings, some reading up front, and then a lot of guidance and learning, right? I'm in product management myself. And one of the things that I find incredibly fulfilling about product management is you get to ask a lot of questions. Right? Every question or every time I learn something, I always ask why. Why is that important? Right? Because sometimes when you go out and talk about stuff, you assume that the other person knows where you're coming from, and that's not always a given. So feel free to ask the questions and feel free to kind of listen more than when you speak, because that's when you learn, right? And so very important skill to have. But yeah, busy days. I try to kind of carve the weekends aside, so I don't have to be thinking about work. Some weekends are better than others, but it's important to also have a sense of work-life balance. As you grow into your careers, right, it's important to kind of be able to step away, have a passion outside of work, because that, whether you think this is true or not, actually helps you with your productivity at work. When your brain gets to kind of, unwind from the normal day-to-day set of things and focus on something which is entirely different, it feels refreshed, right? So when you come back, you're actually more productive than not. So eat right, pay attention to your body, health-wise, and then give your mind that creative outlet that it needs. These are the things that I've found very helpful in my own career, if you would.
So my typical day is I think in a lot of ways similar. We're doing different things, but so I get up, I have a lot of deals with customers based on what I do. So I negotiate and deal with customers where we're selling technology. Specifically, I support healthcare at my company. So I deal with a lot of healthcare companies, so we're talking about our technology, we're talking about healthcare security and different regulations that apply to that industry. So that with customers, or whether it's internal and you're talking to your own tech folks or to your own management, so you have the knowledge and you bring that to the table, and they have their knowledge and they bring that to the table. And so that's how all conversations mostly go. So you're always learning and you're always educating. I feel like that's in most jobs, that's what that's the give and take of any different job. But like Hari was saying, even at work, I participate in the diversity and inclusion and efforts, and I find that fulfilling, and that's something that I'm interested in. And outside of work, we're very involved with the local library. That's just something that I've always been a reader. My children are readers, and so that's something that's important to me. But I think making sure that you are involved in things other than your job is also a good way to keep learning in life about what is going on outside of your industry and your area, and to keep meeting people and form genuine connections. You'll hear a lot in life about networking. Networking isn't just always just asking people for jobs or asking people what they do, but it's forming real connections with people and learning about what they do and being, genuinely interested. And so you don't have to be interested in what everybody's doing, but like I said before, finding out you're not interested in something is also still learning. So so my job, my day-to-day is, it's a lot of time these days, a lot of time on Zoom, but it's mostly having meetings with people, having customer calls, and a lot of, because I'm an attorney, so a lot of time looking at paper and redlining documents, which it probably is not as interesting to a lot of people, but that's it.
I also spend a lot of my time in meetings. It sounds like we're just on Zoom all day, which we are, but I basically spend probably a third of my time meeting with other teams, which is always really fulfilling to me, just to learn what they're doing and see how we can put technology in place to help them and make them, more efficient at their jobs and, not doing all the little mindless things that aren't really worth their time or any of our time. And then I probably spend a third of my time with my teammates, so either one-on-ones coaching some of the newer staff, or, it might be time trying to solve a problem that I've learned about from some other team. How can we use technology to put in place to fix these problems or add new solutions for the business itself? And then one thing that I had a marketing professor tell me in college that I didn't realize would be so important. And I kind of dismissed it at the time, but now realize is just such a huge skill. He told me I would go far because of my writing skills, and that writing skills really are important to really get you ahead in life and in your career. And so I do spend a good amount of my job writing. And I have found that, that is a skill not everyone has. So definitely don't take it for granted. Make sure you can write concisely and really understand what your opinions are on things and be able to express those, because that will get you far in life. And then I also am on the board of Glyde Foundation in San Francisco. And so, that's kind of my evenings and mornings. I'll do a lot of meetings with them, and that's where I get a lot of the kind of the fulfillment. So, recently it's meetings on setting up a vaccination site in the Tenderloin and things like that, that just kind of bring another perspective, which surprisingly I've found has helped me in my job to kind of, you want to get as many perspectives on as many things as possible. And by being on that board, I've learned a lot over the years that I've been able to bring into my day job.
Thank you for all of your guys' amazing responses so far. The next question we have for you all is, what has been the greatest challenge you faced at your job, and how have you been able to overcome it?
Yeah, for me, I think the greatest challenge is the next one. Because along the way, there's always something that you find daunting, or you don't quite see how you get across the bridge, so to speak. But especially in product management, and if it feels like I'm pitching the flag for product management here, I apologize. It's just something that I'm really passionate about. But so much of product management is being able to collaborate. All right, because especially in the software high-tech industry, you're talking about a scarce set of resources, right? Whether it's people, whether it's time, money, whatever the case may be. And how do you best utilize those resources to get your business goals, or to get the maximum benefit for your business goals? And so on any given day, you could have 5 different things that you might want to go out and invest in, right? But they all come with an opportunity cost. If you're investing in things 1 and 2, then you're not really paying attention to 3, 4, and 5. So in that world, right, you're not a product manager if a product manager if you don't have at least 5 good ideas a day, right? And it might be something as simple as, how do I make something go better, go faster, right? Be more secure, if you would. But in a lot of cases, it's also about, look, instead of doing this stuff, I think we need to go out and do something entirely different, right? And so I'll kind of highlight one that was around 5 years ago, about 2 years in, after I joined the company. And again, today it's probably more of a given, but back then in the 2014, 2015 timeframe, there was this whole movement to what we call the cloud today, right? Where people are basically saying, look, I don't need to develop products on my premises anymore. I want to offer my solution as a quote unquote service. Right? And that's a paradigm shift. At the risk of getting into details, it's about basically completely reinventing how you do business. And that's not just designing a product and writing code, but also how you ship the product, how you market the product, how you support the product, and things like that. And that's a big shift for organizations. Today, if you're starting up an organization, you'll probably start it up as a software as a service, or a SaaS, is how the industry refers to it. But back then, it was not necessarily a given. So my biggest challenge at that point was, how do I get the organization to kind of agree to saying, instead of spending 20, 30, 40 million of my budget in research and development, in doing what we do right now, because we were a company that was growing fairly well, right? How do we compromise, potentially cannibalize some of that growth to make sure that we're not caught behind as this next trend, which is moving to software as a service picks up, right? And that's a hard challenge because it's not about solving a technical problem. It's about making sure that you've got your executives, right? And when you're a product manager in the organization, you are one of many voices, right? Sometimes we look at ourselves as, many squeaking wheels, right? And the squeakiest wheel gets the most noise. And so to be able to convince, not just your peers and the people who work under you, but people who you work for as well, that now instead of, putting in 20 million and getting 100 million in, in this particular area, we need to go as an organization to a different area. And that's not a trivial effort. And so that was kind of a challenge. It was a 2-3 year challenge, and I was spending a lot of time talking to customers, talking to analysts, and really collaborating, right? And so I wanted to underscore what Mary pointed out earlier, which is, having an opinion, being able to state it concisely, articulately, and then being able to, collaborate with others, bring others along for the ride is a very important skill, because at any point in time in your careers, you'll be working with other people who have different points of view, different agendas, different goals potentially. And how do you kind of come together? And I see a lot of that in STEM already, but it's just a skill that you'll need to sharpen and, really leverage in your careers going forward, because that's when, if you get a team of people coming together and rowing in the same direction, nothing as fulfilling as that, and nothing as effective as that.
So I just feel like I keep copying everything.
We'll let you go first next time. I'll go last.
But I mean, I guess it's a related point. So the biggest challenge I think that I've encountered in any of my jobs is sometimes you are working with people that are tough personalities. And so I think for me, that's especially hard when that person is your direct manager. I think your direct manager has such an impact on what you're doing. And so you can love everything else on your in where you're working, but your direct manager, if that's the hard relationship, that's a hard thing. And so, you always have to try to, you're going to encounter difficult situations in life. So you have to try to make the best of it and work. They call it managing up. And so you try to explain your position, get everybody on your team and on your side. Sometimes, whether it's with managers or customers or whoever it is, that doesn't work. But I think when it's your direct manager, that has the most impact to you and your job. And so I think so, but it also, I think direct manager can make a great experience for you. And so you should try to cultivate that relationship as much as you can. And, when they're concerned about your growth and give you great projects that stretch what your abilities are, that's where I find the most satisfaction and growth. Like, so what Hari was talking about, his biggest challenge, those are your biggest challenges are often where you also find your biggest successes and what you're most proud of. But when they don't work, sometimes those are the most frustrating situations. And so, so I think it's the balance, right? So you have to undertake the challenge to have that. I tell my kids take piano lessons. And so when they have the recital and they do really well, they're so proud of themselves. And I say, see, it's all that hard work. If you didn't work that hard, you wouldn't be proud, but it's all that hard work that you put into it that makes you so proud of yourself. And I think that's the same is true for all of us, even when we're not 4 years old anymore. So when you work hard at something and it's successful, that's the best thing. But when it's not successful, and especially when you feel like it's not successful because of something that you don't necessarily have control of, I think that's the most frustrating part, at least for me.
And I'll say my biggest challenge is one that comes up, all the time kind of throughout my career is ambiguity. You'll get into lots of challenges at work where you're given a little bit of information and you have to figure it out. So, you might have to break down a problem into lots of little pieces. You might have to go meet with people and interview them, but it can feel very overwhelming at first because you just don't know. And you've got to go learn and, really try to start to understand it. And it's not like someone's going to solve it for you. You're going to have to, really put in the effort to figure out whatever the problem is that you're trying to get through.
Our last question is, what has been your memorable Most memorable or favorite experience or project at your job?
You sure you want me to go first this time? Okay, I'll try. So I have been what we call an IC, or an individual contributor, for much of my career, right? And so when you start, you typically start as a, somebody who's learning under or getting guided by somebody else. And so this most recent job that I've held for the last 7 or so years was my first real, management position. Right. And management is just one of those things which, on one hand, it looks like, hey, it's a great opportunity. It's an elevated role. You get, a bigger salary, more perks, etc. But on the other hand, it's also an incredibly daunting role because, you could look at a management position as, just something that gives you more, more work to do. But I look at it as an opportunity to lead and train the next generation of people, right? And so when I joined, I had one other person on my team, and we've now gone to like 10, maybe 15 people. And the ability to kind of hire, right? And you won't always get the right set of people at your first attempt. Sometimes, you might spend months looking for the right candidate, and you might figure out that, yep, I've got the candidate. But 6 months in, 9 months in, you feel it's just not a good fit, right? Not for them, not for you, not for the organization, etc. So the most fulfilling, aspect of my career, at least the last 5 or 6 years, has been that ability to build a team, right? And it's not just, picking the right individuals for the job, but also picking them so that, when you get together as a team, the combined effect of the team is a lot more impactful than, the sum of its individual parts, so to speak. Right. So being able to do that, and spend the time, right, resisting the urge to roll up your sleeves and let me just do this myself, because you've done that for a lot of time in your career, but really encourage somebody to kind of go through that path, learn for themselves, learn when to insert, when to provide the guidance, but also learn when to kind of step back and say, it's okay to fail, right? It's okay to have this person fail so that they learn from it and things like that. That's been very memorable. So we've hired a couple of people who are very junior in their careers, who were not product managers, as they stepped into my team, and just to see them, come in, grow into their own, become really, really effective, where, I always tell myself, if I'm the smartest person in a room when I walk into a meeting, I'm probably not in the right meeting, right? You always want to learn from smarter people. And so to be able to kind of find those people, groom them, give them the guardrails so that they can grow in their career and, eventually helps with everybody's growth, I think has been the most memorable and fulfilling experience in my career.
So for me, I kind of alluded to it in the last question, but I feel like the most fulfilling parts of my career are when I'm doing kind of stretch projects, when you're learning new things. And so it's kind of what Mary was talking about, the ambiguity. And so in the beginning, it's this whole overwhelming thing that you're looking at, but figuring out and breaking it down into the pieces and figuring that out. And when you're able to accomplish it or create something new that comes out of it, that it's a great feeling. And so you usually work in teams on that. I used to work at a law firm where, you're doing discrete tasks for somebody else's company all the time, but you don't get to see a project necessarily go all the way through, at least for what I was doing, all the way through to where the end. And so now I work in-house at a company, and you get to be involved in those kind of projects where it starts with an idea, and then how do you make the idea into a reality, and who's the team that you need to do it, and those are the hardest things because they don't exist yet. You're kind of carving your own path, but those are the most fulfilling things for me.
All right, mine's completely different. It is nothing to do with my regular day-to-day job. We actually have a band at work, and so we perform at the Christmas party every year. I play bass guitar and I sing. And so, starting a few months before, so usually in the fall, people from all different teams, all different levels of the company, we get together, we go to this crappy music studio in San Francisco, and we start to pick out what songs are we going to play, what covers are we going to do, and we just spend a few months practicing and getting to know people that we wouldn't necessarily interact with on a day-to-day basis at work. And it is just the most fulfilling thing. And then, to get together at the Christmas party and just perform for the whole company. And it is, work isn't all like, you can have fun at work. Like work isn't always just the day to day. There are fun things to do at any company you're going to join someday. And so just keep yourself open to anything and everything.
What a great tradition. I love that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
No one wants to hear me sing though.
So now we will be shifting to an open Q&A. If anyone has any questions, now would be the perfect time to either put them in the chat or feel free to unmute and by raising your hand, and then we would call on you. But yeah, so feel free to do so. In the meantime, I can ask another question. Are there any like interesting or surprising questions any of you have been like asked during an interview, or just any general tips for interviews?
A good general tip is to have questions about the company that you're interviewing for ready, and try to do, you should go in there prepared and research what's publicly available about information about a company. So don't ask something that you could just Google and find the answer to, but kind of what are they known for? What is interesting to you about why about what they're known for, and why would you make a good fit there? So think about all of those things, like what about your experience and background or interests melds with what they do, and then think about questions in that area, or think about questions about how you might grow in that area. So it's a more specific question than just, generally like, oh, what are your benefits or something like that. So it's, I think when somebody does their homework and it shows it, and they ask the right questions, you can show A, that you've done your homework, B, that you're interested in the company, and C, that you have the skills, all just by the question that you ask. And so, I think that's a good way to think of going into an interview.
And I would say the questions that you've asked us today are great questions to ask when interviewing somewhere. What are the challenges you're going to face that people face there? What gets people excited to show up for work every day? Those are the kind of key things to learn about someplace before you commit. So.
Yeah, I agree. Great points, both. I'll just add a little bit there by way of, when you look at an interview, right? And when you're early enough in your career, it might not seem this way, but an organization also has to invest a lot of their resources in you. Right. And so why are you the right candidate? But, it's always a daunting thing, right? How do I position myself as better than the other 20, 30, 500 people that are interviewing for this position? But if you look at it from the organization standpoint, just, I can talk to you about my organization. It takes somewhere between 3 to 6 months after we've decided to hire somebody to get that person productive, just because of a lot of the time that we spend is on educating them about the industry. And especially when you come in early on in your career, a lot of what you've studied or done is not what you're going to be actually using in your day-to-day activities, right? So you might spend a ton of time in PowerPoint and Excel and, making these boring presentations and things like that. But look at it as kind of, paying your dues, so to speak, right? So the reason I went down that path is that when we look for freshmen or relatively junior graduates to hire, we're looking for attitude, right? And we're looking for passion, right? And if you're looking at it as, hey, here's another job, I'm just going to interview it because it popped up on my list, you're not going to strike the interviewer as somebody who will come in and hit the ground running or be passionate about what they do. So being able to convey that you're curious, right? That curiosity in terms of what do you do and how do you do this, right? That always helps, because that means when you join the org, if you get that opportunity, you're going to ask all of those right questions, right? And sometimes when we look for relatively junior candidates, it's because we want people to come in and challenge the norm, so to speak, right? Don't just have those blinkers saying this is how we've done things in our entire career. But having that intellectual curiosity always sets you apart, right? And the other part to it is the ability to say, yep, I don't know what I don't know, and I'm going to learn and I'm going to build off of that, is a great skill to kind of have come across, because that means, whatever the organization has chosen to invest in you, the organization feels more confident about it. I cannot tell you the number of times where we've interviewed, 5 candidates and we have not picked the smartest candidate, right? Because not because of anything else, but because of the attitude aspect of it. Culture is a big part now, right? And I forget who it was who mentioned, I think it was one of the, Mary, you might know, is one of those, famous investors who talked about, every organization being a software organization, and culture eats, everything else within the organization, so to speak. So having that cultural fit, being able to come in and fit well, and, being able to drive the team forward is something that you don't need to have 20 years of experience to convey. You can do that, on day one in your career, so to speak. So, make sure you kind of have those things come across in your interview, and be confident, right? This is not the only job you're interviewing for, right? And as much as the organization has to decide that you are the right fit, the opposite is also true, right? You don't want to end up spending 8, 10, 12 hours, because whether you like it or not, once you start your careers, you're going to be spending that amount of time. It's not going to be a 9 to 5 kind of job, right? Those kind of days are long gone. It'll be 10, 12, 14 hours. So if you're not enjoying what you do, it will show, and it will be, not just time that you have quote unquote wasted. I wouldn't call it wasted, because again, it kind of falls into that experience category. But it's also from the organization standpoint, they have to look at it as, okay, how much can we or should we invest in this direction? So be confident, be passionate about what you do, and ask those questions that kind of tell the interviewer that you're willing to learn, and you're willing to kind of help row the oar in the right direction, with the rest of the org, so to speak.
There's a follow-up question in the chat, which is, what are some qualities that you might look for if you were hiring someone in your field of work?
I think Harry just kind of answered part of this, but the number one thing I look for is not necessarily what you've done, but what you're willing to learn and do. I'm looking for someone who doesn't just want to do the job, who wants to constantly learn and constantly progress and constantly move forward in their career and development. So that's always a question I like to ask people is, what do you want to do? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And just seeing that's there will be some growth in their plan for, not that they need to figure out what that's going to be, but that they're going to be open to learning and growing in general.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both Mary and Hari that so the intellectual curiosity and the willingness to keep on learning. There's so much, and especially now there's more and more. Technology is progressing faster and faster and faster. And so that willingness to learn new things is, I feel like it's always been important, but it's probably more important now. There's something that I read recently that said that the jobs that my kids are going to have when they grow up probably don't even exist yet. And so, so you don't know, so it sounds like when we all were in college, the internet was just a baby. so now, we didn't think that it was, or even if we did think, it's taken over everything. And so even as an attorney, I'm working in tech, so the world is changing so fast, and you have to be able to adapt and change with it. And I think showing that curiosity, showing that ability to keep on learning and adapting, that's very, very important for interviewing these days.
Yeah, don't have anything else to add. I think we covered pretty much everything we wanted to say on that front.
And I think probably all of you guys, you grew up in a different time, so you probably have much more of that adaptability already ingrained in you. But demonstrating that and figuring out how you're going to demonstrate it sincerely in an interview, I think that's something is just something worth spending some time thinking about.
Yep.
Most definitely. The next question we have from the chat is, how many years did you go to college, and do you think it is necessary today to go beyond a bachelor's degree?
So in my own case, I think I had 4 years of undergrad, and then I got my master's done in like a year or a little less than a year. there is no right answer to that question, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it really comes down. I know some of the most successful people, the most effective people that I've worked with, didn't even finish high school. Right now, it's more of an exception than the norm, right? But at the end of the day, it's about being able to, find what you're truly passionate about, and having everything else come together so that you can be effective at what you do. So, I've got folks on my teams that are PhDs, right? So they've done their undergrad, they've gone to grad school, and then they've, super specialized on some area of, cryptography for what if you want to look at it that way. And I also have some people who are, who didn't finish their bachelor's degree, and they're effective in their own way, right? It's really, having a degree kind of gives you that framework with respect to, how you approach a problem. So much of, your work careers will be about problem solving in different sort of forms and formats, if you would. So an undergrad degree kind of gives you that framework with respect to, okay, how do you qualify the problem, right? How do you figure out, how to state the problem? How do you figure out how to come up with potential solutions? How do you evaluate the best solution? And then how do you document all of that stuff? So, independent of discipline, a lot of undergrad kind of gives you that sort of guidance. And then, a grad school degree, maybe if you're going into medicine, for example, it's extremely critical, right? Because you need to kind of keep up with, what's new in that field, and, research and things like that. In other areas, I know lots of people who learn by doing, right? And so they haven't had the experience of going to a grad school, but at the same time, they've tinkered around with it so much, either through work, right? So they went ahead and worked at Radio Shack or Fry's, and these are, organizations that don't exist anymore. But people just tinkered around with stuff, right? And kind of learned on the job. And then, 4 or 5 years in, they kind of figured out, yeah, this is where I want to go, right? So just anecdotally speaking, when I joined grad school, I was straight out of undergrad, right? So in different parts of the world, people approach it in different ways. In the US, generally, the idea is you go through undergrad and then you kind of work, and then you figure out if you want to go to grad school or not. Right? I highly recommend that because it's not for everyone. But where I was born and raised, right, the general philosophy was you finish your undergrad and then you go to your grad and then you go look out for a job, right? So that kind of went with the flow. And so when I did my grad school, I was probably by far the youngest in my class, right? I was like 20 or something, and everybody else was 28, 30, right? And I felt kind of out of place. But at the same time, I had the experience in working with these people who were so incredibly motivated and focused on why they were going to grad school, right? Part of it was because, hey, you're sacrificing 2 years of your work life, right? And that's money and all the other things that come with it. But the other part of it is them really knowing, yes, we want to focus on this, and that really helps as well. So don't really have this is the right answer or this is the right number of years for you. It'll depend on which area you're going and your passion for it. But think of, whether it's grad school or undergrad or even PhDs, right? So they allow you to specialize in a specific area. They give you that framework with respect to how you analyze a problem, how you solve a problem. And then it really comes down to, how you want to take it and how much you learn and, leverage out of that experience.
And I'll say, in my experience, I did, a 4-year undergrad. Then I spent 3 years getting my CPA at an accounting firm. And when I made my career switch, I was just really, there was a part of me that was dealing with the fact that, I did all this school, all this learning, and I was going to just throw it to waste. And what I have learned is none of that went to waste. It all taught me, how to work, how to have frameworks. And then, turns out budgeting becomes a huge part of your job as your career, kind of as you move up in an organization. And so being able to talk the talk with the finance teams and really put together complex budgets and understand all that, it ended up, all that, none of that school was wasted, or time learning was wasted. I don't think I can say there's anything I've learned in my lifetime that has gone completely wasted, even if I'm not using it as practical knowledge.
I'd agree with that as well. And I went to more school than anyone needs to go to. I've switched fields a couple of times. I think I'm still using all of those things, and you don't have to go to that much school, but you I don't think learning is ever a waste. That's just my personal opinion, but I don't also think learning requires going to school. Learning also doesn't require going to the best school. And so all of those things, it's a very personal consideration. It depends on what you want to do. There's some careers that if you want to be a doctor, you have to go to medical school. If you want to be a lawyer, most places you have to go to law school. So those things will play a part. If those are the things that you want to do, that will play a part in it. But I think there's other careers and other ways to learn. And it depends on what you want to do. But I think it all depends. So, what you want to do, where you want to end up, and where life takes you. So sometimes school is expensive. So I took some time before I went to undergrad straight after high school, but I took some time before I went back to school to figure out what I wanted to do. And I thought, at that time, I thought I'd figured out what I want to do. And I still haven't figured out what I want to do. So it's such a personal choice. I think I like everyone is saying, and I feel like I'm just going in circles, but it's learning, I think, is the important thing. Where you're doing it is not it's not as important unless it's a prerequisite for what you want to do.
Our next question is, was there anything you did in high school, classes, outside programs, or etc. that helped you decide which field you wanted to go to?
Sorry to disappoint you, but not in my case, right? Because I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like I said, I went kind of with the flow, so to speak. It was more about the intellectual curiosity, right? Being able to, work to a deadline. And again, the curriculum when I was growing up, where I was growing up was very different. It was less about application-based learning, which is why I think STEM's got a great thing going here, with respect to where you're at, within your schooling careers. But, as I look back at it, right, the ability to, again, clearly, articulately convey what you want to say, right, to people. Sometimes it's through presentations, sometimes it's through verbal communications, but through slides, if you would, right. That's a very important skill, right? The ability to kind of collaborate, have empathy. These are all things that, independent of which career, which company you work for, will always, help you, in your own growth. Being able to kind of understand, look, I'm working with 5 other people. I'm going to have to depend on other people, not just within my organization, but outside of my organization as well. Being able to cultivate those relationships, to network with people, and really help people. I think, I firmly believe in that paying it forward thing that I talked about earlier. Those are things that, help you in high school, help you in grad school, undergrad, anywhere and everywhere, right? Speaking specifically about, where I'm at right now, I did pick up a number of courses in software and in computer technology and things like that. But those are things that I took in high school that I didn't focus on in either undergrad or in grad school. But now they're coming back to kind of help me, right? So I would think it's more of the soft skills, right? Your ability to work in a group, your ability to kind of, set yourself goals, right? Maintain a work-life balance, kind of prioritize how you want to spend your time, your day. Those are all things that, you will need to exercise even at this stage in your careers, right? Just to make sure that, look, I'm spending enough time on, reading or writing or cooking or cleaning or whatever these things are. Just transpose that, 20 years, 15 years later, it might be a different set of things, but the same principle applies. What's the most important thing for you to get done today, right? Or if I'm working with other people, how do I convince, again, I go back to what Mary had mentioned, being able to write, convey what you want to do, is a very important skill set that will only help you. It's so much of, so many people that I interact with, right? So they come from a management consultant background or an investment banker background. So they do their research, right? And there's a ton of data that they kind of crank out, much like what you guys do here in STEM, but also be able to synthesize that and to say, here are the top 3 things, right? The takeaways, and be able to convey that, because the people who are, looking at your work, right? They are not as much in your work as you are. So this will be one of 10 different things that they might be doing, right? And they might be doing multiple things at the same time. They might be able to, or in a position where they're multitasking, right? So to be able to convey that, hold their attention and say, look, if you had like 5 seconds on this, then here's the message that I want you to take away. That'll help you a lot. And that is independent of the field that you work in or what field you want to specialize in as your career evolves.
My 2 cents on this question is that I don't think, honestly, I can't even tell you all the classes that I took in high school. I don't even remember what they all were. And I don't know that I'm not using or specifically using any of those classes. I think obviously the math classes, the writing classes, those are things that you use throughout your life. But I think high school, I mean, the fact that you guys are all attending this program is what you need to be doing, right? You need to be exploring things that you're interested in, figuring it out, what it means to be doing things. So classes is one way to do that, talking to people and coming to things like this, but talking to people, other adults in your life and other people that you meet, that's another way to be doing it. And it's just, at this point, what you should try to be doing is trying to figure out what it is that you want to be doing. And that can change. Like I said earlier on, you can make a plan, but that plan might change. But it's good to know what gets you out of bed in the morning, and that's what you should be trying to figure out.
And I'll say, I was in every single club in high school. It was, I was trying everything out, whether it was, I was president of our 4-H. I was a foreign exchange student in high school. I did it all, and just all of those experiences and meeting and working with just a variety of different people still applies to what I do every single day now. And even now that I'm out of high school, I'm still starting new clubs, new programs all the time. So, I'm vice chair of a nonprofit in San Francisco, and I'm constantly starting new programs there. So I started a Glyde Reads book club for people within the organization. I started a children's program there. So the behavior I had in high school with clubs and different things like that has followed me throughout my life. And it just kind of started the foundation for learning how to do those types of things, even if it may not be the exact same things.
Thank you all. I think the last question went hand in hand with that one, so we don't necessarily need to do that one, as you guys all answered that one. So before we do close out, we did want to quickly take a picture. So if everyone could turn their cameras on, that would be lovely. And yeah, okay. I'll count down and then take it. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. Thank you, everyone. And Isha will
Thank you.
As this is all the time for today, thank you all for attending Evolve's first mini career fair. If you guys have any follow-up questions for any of today's panelists, feel free to email us at horizon.evolve@gmail.com, and we'll happily forward your questions to all of today's panelists.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all. Good luck with your careers. Feel free to reach out.
Yes, thank you.
Take care. Bye.